The first Europeans to settle the Americas were Acadian. They came alone without support. They came to live. They came to stay. In 1755, England gained possession of Acadie and, in spite of the Acadian oath of neutrality, began a project to rid the eastern seaboard of the French. All Acadian men over age 10 were detained until ships could arrive for their deportation. Acadian churches were transformed into concentration camps. Families were torn apart, never to be reunited. Accusations of genocide were exchanged then as now. Over 7,000 Acadians were interred in Massachusetts, in Baltimore, in warehouses in England. They were reviled in New York, in Charleston, in Savannah. Some made their way to France. Many wandered for the rest of their lives. Decades later, small groups of refugees began arriving in Louisiana. In all, no more than 2,500 survived the Grand Dérangement. Here they built their new Acadie. In 1912, Louisiana became the first state in the nation to adopt English as its only language. The teaching of the French language would be banned for the next 70 years.
Ouais, j'ai appris à parler en anglais. Mais chaque Dieu avec un tel Dieu, il n'a pas pu voler mon héritage. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, je parle toujours le français et je suis toujours gaucher. For those who do not understand French, I'll also say it in English. I'm Elger Melançon from Cecilia, a small town in St. Martin Parish. And when I started school in the year 1941, I was not allowed to speak French at school. That was the only language I knew. My parents were poor farmers and spoke French only. If I spoke French in the classroom, I was punished. The teacher would make me kneel down in front of the class. Then I'd have to write lines. I will not speak French in school. Outside, on the school ground, while playing, if I spoke French, they make me kneel down on the concrete sidewalk. Also, I'm left-handed. I favor my left hand. And it hit the tip of my fingers with a paddle to try to discourage me from using my left hand. I could not understand why I could not use my left hand or speak French in school. After all, the teachers spoke French. In school, they were Cajuns like us. Yes, I learned to speak English, but I'm a hard-headed Cajun. They could not take away my heritage. Today, I still speak French, and I'm still left-handed.
Louisiana's first Cajun governor of the 20th century was elected in 1972. Edwin Edwards was sworn into office in French, and one of his first acts as governor was to repeal the ban on the French language. In the following years, children have once again been allowed to receive their education in the French language.
Basically, we try to have a half a day in English, half a day in French. The people who are not involved in the school directly are more or less, usually when you mention immersion to them, they're usually surprised because either they don't know what it's all about, and when you explain to them what it is, they sound like, oh, this is good, ça c'est bon. We are fortunate here in Cecilia that we have been able to build a program from kindergarten up to 6th grade, but we would like to see it go further, sure, but we don't necessarily have the support to go further, because when we go further, that means we have to hire another teacher for the next class on up, which means that salary-wise, the money has to come from somewhere else, and we don't necessarily have the support to have that extra teacher or to have that extra salary.
We get to speak another language, and it's fun.
Yeah. How long have you been in the immersion program? Since kindergarten or?
Preschool.
Preschool.
We learn the days of the weeks and the months.
Program.
I think it's pretty good. Get to learn a lot more things.
Yeah. Been involved in that.
The South Louisiana community has rallied around French Immersion by forming support groups for the program.
Well, I became involved with French Immersion when I came to Louisiana about 2 years ago from Ireland, because I had seen the destruction of the language and how it had come back. And French has made a full circle, because years ago it was illegal to speak French in the schools, and people were punished, and French was regarded as a second-class language. And now it's come full circle, because there's actually a waiting list to get children in to be able to speak French. It's also having a lot of practical effect, because not only are the students learning who they are, where they came from, and what the language that was forbidden for so long is, but it has some practical effects, because 40% of the students, of the tourists that come to Louisiana, are from French-speaking countries. So it's necessary to have people who can speak to these people. It will also help Louisiana as far as business is concerned, because we will have a complete generation of people who are educated and ready to take positions in commerce, which may have links with the French-speaking world in France, Africa, Quebec, New Brunswick, all over. And immersion simply means to immerse, to baptize, to dip the people, the students, in the language, not just an hour a week or whatever. And we want the children to know that a person can live their life in French.
Two years ago, Shane Landry from Baton Rouge, he formed this club out of LSU called the Cajun Student Association, and within about 2 semesters they had 120 students. I was in the midst of, working on something, to try to start an organization like that. My theory is, in order to promote the culture, you have to let them know a little bit mostly about the history, because it's not taught in schools. Like Louisiana history, they don't teach anything about the Acadian exile, because not only is the Cajun culture, it's not only the language and the music, but it's also like real strict Catholicism. You know, a lot of people my age associate Cajun with being, you know, something of the past. Like they think of Cajun, they'll think of like an old bousselage house, you know, with grandma sitting on the porch, you know. But what I'd like to do is, you know, let them know about the history and, you know, bring the Cajun culture into the future, because as we move more in the 20th century, we're losing the language and the identity of it. It's becoming more commercial. And I believe that if you have a strong hold of your roots, then the Cajun culture can be something of the future without losing or sacrificing anything towards, you know, Americanism.
Today, over 260,000 Louisiana residents speak French in the home. In 1995, a group known as Action Cajun was formed to ensure the survival of the French language in Louisiana.
It was formed March 21st, 1995 at the church, at the Acadian village, as a symbol of freeing ourselves of this stigma that has followed the Acadian people into the 19th century, into the 20th century. And hopefully we'll enter the 21st century with a resolve to overcome it. The reason for being for Action Cajun is, well, to recognize the immersion program as the last chance that we have to use French as a vehicle of education. But it goes further than that. It's to take French from between the covers of a textbook and put it back on the streets, in the stores, at the football games, at the baseball games, on horseback, at the restaurants, in the hotels, back in the home, especially back in the home, back in the church. French exists. It just needs to be recognized for what it is. It's the heart of our culture. It's the way that we express our culture, our history. What we need to make important, though, is the idea that it's not our history that's important today. It's our future. It's easy to be part of your children's history. What's difficult under these circumstances is to assure that the French language is a part of my children's future.
J'étais bien content à soir pour attendre et pour voir, parce que quand même si je suis français, je viens d'ici, je suis une Cajun. J'avais jamais vu l'histoire de ma monde, j'avais jamais entendu l'histoire de ma monde. Et j'ai jamais été à la place ici de Lafayette, là où que j'aurais pu voir. Et moi, j'ai venu avec mon amie parce qu'elle est une maîtresse d'école et on travaille ensemble des fois. Et moi, j'aime faire tout ça je peux pour aider à le français de continuer. Et j'ai appris des choses, j'ai vu. J'étais contente pour connaître plus pour l'histoire. Et j'ai aussi eu la chance de travailler avec des jeunes qui viennent de leur programme d'immersion. Ils m'ont invité de travailler avec eux parce que je suis un artiste et aussi que je parle en français. Et je connais que ce travail. Et pour moi, ça m'a donné un grand cœur pour aider avec des enfants. Et quand je disais quelque chose, ça me comprend. Et ça faisait ça que je disais. Et j'étais contente pour voir qu'il y a une chance que le français peut aider encore forte dans la Louisiane et pas quelque chose qui pour être caché. J'ai des enfants et mon plus jeune était tout le temps trop vieille pour être dans le programme, mais je crois qu'elle va apprendre pour être capable de parler.
I think we've always had a broad-based foundation of support, and I think that continues. One of the things that struck me when I moved to Louisiana was that in many ways this was a closed culture, very defensive. I don't think they appreciated the wealth of their culture. And I initially looked at the festival as a way of allowing the Cajun and Creole cultures to begin to really appreciate their own uniqueness and the talent in here. The talent in this area is incredible.
Very often you'll meet people and you'll know that French is their first language, but they're ashamed to speak it because it was so much drummed into them by an English society. You know, English is a voracious language which gobbles up other languages and destroys them, I think.
I pray that the immersion program can be a part of who we are, so that the lost generation, who are we, who some of us are motivated out of love and some of us are angry and some of us feel, I don't know what everybody feels something different. But if we want to give it to the kids, it's got to come through the schools, and this works.
Why would you want to put a limit on the American dream by limiting access to government to only one language? We're not talking about immigrants here, just coming here and saying, well, you're going to need to learn English to function in America. I mean, that's accepted. We're the biggest proof of that. You know, you need to, just because you need to know English to function in America doesn't mean that you have to completely destroy your identity.